So what I'm going to start doing is processing people's voices. And Andy Wang sent me audio. A lot of people sent me audio. 15 people sent me audio so far, which is awesome. All right, so I'm going to process the voices. So what I had to do, this was a really good excuse for me to start looking through all my plugins and like sort of taking stock of what plugins I have, you know, because what happens with me, like I own a lot of plugins. I'm going to show you pretty much all of them right now because I divided them up into genres or categories. And now I got to go through and think about how I'm going to do this on a stream. But anyway, I wanted to show you what all plugins I found. I guess that was my point. All right, so I grouped my EQs together. Oh, yeah. Yeah, and disregard the check marks. I'm not really using any of them. I literally was just throwing them. Like I was just finding any EQ I had and throwing them into one plugin chain, which, again, I won't use them all at the same time, obviously. Bob says, have you seen some of the changes to Audition that cut back the need for plugins? Compression, de-essing, volume matching, etc. Yeah, Bob, I think that stuff's been in Audition for either for a very long time or forever. You know, it always, I'm sure it had, you know, compression and de-essing for sure. Now that it might have gotten better, because apparently, from what I've heard, Adobe Audition has very good plugins, you know, native to the app itself. Oh, it just showed up in the latest version. All right, well, yeah. So, Mike from the UK, he probably made a video about that. Over in the dialogue setup on the far right, not in the menus. Oh, okay. So, okay, so here's what I had for EQs. Gulfos, this is sort of like an otherworldly plugin. It's an EQ that uses artificial intelligence to automatically make lots of EQ changes in a very short period of time. I think it makes 300 adjustments per second. Or is it 100? Or 200? Anyway, it's hundreds of decisions per second about how to adjust the EQ. And so this is actually mostly meant for music. When I've tried this on the human voice, it does work sometimes better than others, but in general, I believe this is more of a musical, like it's an intelligent EQ, but it also adds a tone changes, slight tone changes, obviously, because it's doing a lot of EQing. So for like podcast voices, this hasn't been a home run for me. In music, I think it would have more use in music, but I do use this. Okay, so not very often, but I do use this, and it's so fun. It's so cool. But I mean, when I start making these videos of processing people's voices, I'm going to skip around using different plugins. Like, I'm not just going to use this as the EQ on every video I make, you know. I'll have to go through, you know, work my way through all these and just use a bunch of different EQs. So you got the API 550B. This is a Coral Baxter from Acoustica, and it's free, actually. But it's a very simple EQ. So I haven't really tried it because I think the EQs I have are probably better than that. But hey, it's free. It's a plugin, and I'm sure it sounds really good. Acoustica is a very good sounding plugin company. In fact, they make my favorite plugin ever, which I just learned about a month ago. So Acoustic is awesome. All right, then of course you got the Fab Filter Pro Q3. I mean, you know what? This is just an amazing EQ. One of the best EQs on earth. Let's put it that way. Like, no joke. And everyone kind of, well, let's say a lot of people would agree with that. So, How expensive is the Pro Q3? Bob, the Pro Q3, I think FabFilter stuff, like if you buy one plugin, it's probably around $180 or $200. But if you buy like a bundle of 3 or 4 or 5, then the price has actually come down. Although, I mean, you end up spending more because you're buying more plugins, but your cost per plugin goes down considerably. That's one cool thing about FabFilter. Oh yeah, pricey. Definitely, Bob. Pro Q3 is a high-end, expensive EQ, but I don't know. It's at least, this is going to sound crazy, it's at least 3 times as good of an EQ as any other EQ. I mean, it's ridiculous what you can do with this plugin and how good it sounds. It's really cool. I mean, this is world class. All right, enough gushing. Oh God, I didn't want to bring up that topic. I'm referencing the gush video idea in the Podcasters Lounge. Oh, because that's the other thing I want to remind everybody. Definitely, if you're not a member of the Facebook group, the Podcasters Lounge, definitely join. This is becoming a cool group. 528 members. I know, like, in the grand scheme of, Facebook groups, 528 is not really that much, and definitely not astronomical. But dude, I just started a Facebook group to just have a place to hang out and do some live streams, and now there's, I don't know, I think that's a lot. 528. It's pretty cool. Glad you guys are part of it. Well, I didn't say any of them were my friends, Bob. Okay. Hey, Brad Hargis. Dude. Happy you're here, man. I'm experimenting, and I had this grand idea, Brad, that I should stream on Twitch about what we're talking about now, is like, podcast production stuff, like, promoting podcast engineering school, right? So I want to start doing that, and so this is the channel for that. So this is my first this is my first video. This is my first stream, just testing everything and messing around. So here's the Pultec Puig Tech, whatever, EQP1A, and of course the MEQ5, which is mid-range EQ. When's the last time there was an EQ that was basically a mid-range EQ? This thing's old. Yeah, Bob, you like Twitch the best out of any service like this that you've used? That's cool, man. I also feel that way about Twitch and streaming. It's just cool. I don't know. The user interface, I guess, is really good, or simple, or what? I don't know. Why is it? Why, Bob, do you like it the best? I'd like to know. For me, it just feels good. It feels like it was built for live streaming, as opposed to YouTube, which was built with static videos and then got into live streaming, which doesn't take away anything from the quality of YouTube streaming. I mean, it's really good. Right there with Twitch, really. But Twitch is very cool. Okay, then you got the Sheps 73, which this is a really cool EQ. It's modeled after, of course, a Neve 1073. Cool. Oh, there you go. No lag, high res. Oh, even I look good. Barry, is that possible?
No way. Yeah. Oh yeah. No way.
Those are the high-pitched Barry clips that I rarely play them. I gotta vary Barry more. Okay, terrific. Twitch mobile app. Yeah, there, good call. What one thing about the Twitch mobile app though, I believe, and this is probably actually the same thing with YouTube. Well, YouTube, I think on my phone, I can, if I swipe it down, it'll keep playing in a thumbnail, and I can like, can I go to different apps outside and just do my thing on other apps while YouTube is still playing in the corner? I can't remember, but anyway, I don't think Twitch. I tried that with Twitch, and it didn't. I don't think there's anything like that. Like if you click away from Twitch on the mobile app, like the video, it all stops. The video stops and audio stops, and you don't see it. You know, obviously, you're looking at a different app, but Twitch just stops, and then when you go back to it, it'll re-engage and restart. The VEQ 4. This one is built. It's modeled off of some classic hardware, but I forget what. Then of course you got the Oral Exciter. This is such a cool tool to have in your toolbox, in your podcaster's toolbox. Ralph. Yeah, because it's an Oral Exciter. So you basically, it adds a lot of clarity, but it's like smooth, good sounding clarity. It's not just where you're boosting high frequencies like in an EQ. It does EQing when you use it, but what it's boosting is the harmonics and stuff. It's not just a straight classic EQ. So it adds like a smoothness. I think when I was working on the Quicksand record, I think Jason Corsaro may have used one of these on some guitars, or maybe on one song or something. I think I remember him using an Oral Exciter. One thing that was cool about when I was an assistant engineer is that I'd work with a lot of different engineers, and then most engineers have equipment preferences. So they might, like if the studio doesn't have a vintage Oral Exciter, an engineer, if they knew they were probably going to use one, they would tell the studio, hey, I need, probably give them a short list of gear, like 3 or 5 or 10 items, whatever, just lists of gear that, hey, I want this, I want that, I want a de-esser, because some rooms didn't have de-essers, and these guys would come in to mix. They need a de-esser, so they'd bring one in. Oh, so Bob asked, how does that compare to the Aphex Oral Exciter on my Rodecaster Pro? Well, what you're seeing on the screen is the original, is what the Rode Oral Exciter is based off of. It's the exact, well, I don't know if it's the exact same thing. Well, this is a Waves plugin, so I'm sure Rode is using a different way to process it. Yeah. Well, then you have the Aquamarine 4 EQ. Oh, there you go, Bob. Okay, so right. So in the Rodecaster Pro, the Aphex Oral Exciter is an on or off button, basically. So you can just turn it on and off. Yeah, so what they probably did, again, probably not using this exact plugin version, but emulating the same piece of hardware. They probably figured out a good, like a mild setting, like maybe it's having this on 2, right? Maybe you're adding some of that excitement to it, but not too much. So that's what they did. They just estimated what would be a good middle of the road setting, and then they just use that setting. So when you turn it on, let's just say it's equal to having it on 2, and then you can turn it off. That's all. Yeah, you like it? That's cool. Yeah, they're really nice when they work. Like it, and you know a similar thing to this too is the air button in the new Focusrite Scarlett 2i2, the air button, well, that's definitely an EQ. The air button is an EQ. It's not an oral exciter. It's just a straight EQ. But it adds quite a, it's very noticeable when you push the air button in. It adds a lot of that very high end, which is sometimes too much. And so that's one of the reasons why someone might not like it on their voice, because they, for instance, me, I wouldn't use it on my voice because it just adds too much of that really high end, like 15K and above, like high end. Yeah, one thing about the high frequencies is that those really high frequencies, if you're boosting those very high frequencies in a recording that's really well recorded, like let's say it's a saxophone recording of a saxophone, and just the recording that's on tape sounds is recorded really, really well with a good mic. Sometimes if it's recorded really well, then those really high frequencies, they make it sound even better. It's just because it's so vivid and crystal clear and that super clarity. So if you're starting with a good sound, it'll enhance it a lot. But if you take something that's not recorded well, or something that actually sounds bad, and then you boost those high frequencies, yeah, then it's horrible. You're making it worse instead of better. So, all right, Brad, see you, brother. Thanks for popping in, man. Okay, so Aquamarine 4, this is an EQ that came along with the Aquamarine 4 dual compressor, which is my new favorite plugin. And if I start going off on this, I'll keep going for a long, long time, and we don't want that. And then there's Shep's Parallel Particles, which is it's a very unique plugin. It's an EQ for sure. You got the sub bass here, you got the low mids sort of here, low mids. You got the air, which is the really high frequencies, probably 12K and above, or something around there. And then you got the bite, which is the high mids, which is, it gives you that, if something's just not clear enough, like it's just not biting enough, it's dull, you crank up the bite. So it's an EQ, but when it boosts the signal, it's also adding more compression to that band. So it's a multi-band compressor as well. And the more you turn up, for instance, the more you add bite, not only are you you're EQing those frequencies up, but you're actually compressing those frequencies even more. Looks like a gamer's gadget or something, yeah. I used to use, when I first got this, I used it, not that much, but I used it quite a bit. But then I stopped, and I could never fit it into my workflow, I mean, I liked it when I used it, but it never, Hey, JB. What's up? Welcome to the stream. I'm just hanging out, talking about, testing this stream, because I'm going to start doing it on Twitch directly from Ecamm. Yeah, so we're testing a bunch of things, and then we're just kind of going over, talking about some plugins at the same time. It's kind of like going through like I'm just going through my whole list of plugins and like just like a few comments on each one. All right, so this is all the EQs that I put together for my upcoming project. And compressors, well, let's start at the top. Well, so it says compressors, but it really should say dynamics. But I decided on compressors. But anyway, this is an expander, of course, but it's part of dynamic. It's hard to explain why I put this in here, but all right, but that's a gate. Then you got Spiff, which is a very cool plugin. It's a transient shaper. It's hard to explain. It's really cool though. And for podcasting, it has a preset for, guess what? Remove mouth clicks. Remove mouth clicks. Yeah. So there's a preset for that. Anyway, so this is the API 2500 compressor. I think I used this once in real life, or again, I was possibly an assistant engineer on a session that used it, which means that I would have had to unpack it, set it up, plug it in, route it through the patch bay, make sure there's level in and out of it. Maybe zero it out if you can. That's the best way to do it. Zero the input and output at Unity. So that way if you ever have to... Yeah, well, that's a whole thing. I don't know if I should explain about the right way to make sure that after the session's over, you have to write down basically every setting of every piece of gear in the entire room. And with a piece of gear like this, hardware, you'd have a recall sheet. It's like a skeleton picture of it on a piece of paper. And so then you just draw with a pencil where each knob is. Is it at 2 o'clock, 1:30, so you literally draw it in and write down settings. And that way, after you mix it down, if it's 2 weeks later and they say, oh, we got to come back in and do a recall, which means they like the mix, but there's like a few things in the mix that they need to correct. So when they come back in the studio, it was a lot of times my job to make sure that, obviously I'm putting the same reels of tape on the tape machine, but then I'm making sure I'm plugging in the patch bay all the effects and inserts and sends and this and that, and then the mixing board itself, you'd have to, every single knob of the mixing board, you'd have to put in the same place. Luckily, well, actually, that would kind of be impossible with something like an SSL, but luckily SSL, even then, it basically memorize where every knob was, so that when you did the recall, you would load into the computer the settings, and then you would just, once you start twisting a knob, you'll see it on the screen, and you just tell it, you set it by putting it where it is on the screen. And then all the outboard gear, you'd have to make sure you use a 1K tone, send it to each piece of gear, like this, let's say, if you had this plugged in as a piece of outboard gear. You got to send 1 kilohertz at 0 VU into it, and then make sure the output's coming back to the console and hitting the console at exactly 0. So that way the input is at 0 and the output of that is at 0. So now when you go to this plugin, for instance, you go to the piece of hardware and you twist all the knobs back to where they were, it's literally that piece of hardware is in the same exact condition it was during the first mix. And if you do that with every piece of gear, and then the engineer can walk in and press play, and the tape plays from the tape machine, audio comes through the console, through all the outboard gear, and it sounds at least very close to the original mix. And so then as the engineer, what they would do is then you just make the few tweaks you wanted to make. And of course, other things arise as you're doing that. You know, it's not that simple. It's not like, oh, we want, 3 more dB of low end in the kick drum. And so you're going to do this recall. Guy's going to walk in, put it up 3 dB and walk out. Like that never happens. So the engineer, you kind of have to mix it again. Although you got it back to almost where it was. So you really can improve the mix. And they do. And then that's it. All right, well, this is the Aquamarine 4. Yes, Bob, that's awesome. The Rodecaster Pro does that. You can save all those settings and then recall it later or reload it later. Yeah. Hey, Tom Kelly. What's up, brother? You've been making some videos, man. Good job, dude. Very cool, man. So, all right, again, I'm not going to gush about that. This one is the Waves CLA2A. This one is like... This is one of my favorites, and I'm starting to use it again now. So... Because I was using this one, not this one, for many years. This one is really, really good. I rarely use them both, both in the same signal chain though, because they're sort of, it's like it's 2 different flavors almost. But it's easy just to pick one you like using and use it, because... Yeah, I was using Bluey on all kinds of stuff. This is a new one I got, El Rey. Highly respected in music, and it is a good compressor. But it's still very new to me, but I'm still working my way around this one to really dial it in. For subtle compression, it's really good. But when I start pushing it, compressing it more, kind of really pushing it hard, it sort of starts to pump and breathe and it becomes audible and I don't know, and maybe also something with the way with spoken word that has to do with it, and maybe that's just my perception of it. I don't know. But this one was on sale, so I bought it and I like it. But again, I'm still working through it. Of course, the FabFilter Pro C2, this one I'm still working through. The FabFilter Pro MB I use all the time, mostly to fix bad, fix recordings that don't sound that good, especially in the low mids. I'll have a low mid. Well, I have a lot of bands. What's my normal? Yeah, like this is something. This is kind of how I might use it. Although I had this setting, but I switched it back to 220. 220 is one of those frequencies. I don't know what it is. One thing might be because on a lot of Neve gear, Rupert Neve would always, like, on the low end for the EQ. Yeah, see, even on my Portico 2, there's a choice for 220 hertz and then 100 hertz. But normally, like on the Shep 73, see the notch settings of the frequency. It's either 220 or 110 or 60 or 35. This is the classic from the 1073. So anyway, 220, I don't know, it just seems to be like when you well, that's an area of the frequency. That's an area of the frequencies that's important. Or like a good demarcation between like the lows and then you maybe start getting into low mids-ish. I forgot the Dead were still jamming on in the background. So Pro MB, awesome. Anyway, great. Ozone 9. I'm not using... I'm in a phase where I'm not using much of Ozone lately. Then you got the Puig Child 660, which this is, just another old school compressor. Then you got the SSL bus compressor, which I don't use much either. I probably got that in like a bundle with something else. Then you have Tan, which is another free one from Acoustica. I haven't tried it really. I mean, it looks okay, but then you got the V-Comp, and then the Pro L2, which I was showing earlier, which is on my voice right now. And I'm really digging using limiters here and there now. And that balance between like compressing something a little and then limiting it a little. Like doing both, but a little and a little. Really helps make things still sound great, but just be louder and more clear. All right, anyway. So as I said before, I don't know how I'm going to make these videos and use all different combinations of these plugins at the same time. Anyway, so I just put different on separate tracks. I put the different categories of plugins. So Timeless 2 I got when I all right, Bob, thanks for hanging out, man. Congrats on everything, brother. All right, brother, rock on, dude. Yeah, this Timeless 2 is so many different effects. Look at it, all kinds of delays, reverbs. There's like so much in here. Look at it. I mean, that's a best of list. This is basic stuff. Chorus, echo, a stereo delay, different types of echoes and wobbles. Chorus, of course, flanging. Hungover, saturated swirl. I mean, don't you want to hear what these things sound like? Yeah. Saturated swirl. Okay. All right. Distortion. Metallic verb. Ooh. Dub. Lo-fi. I mean, you see what I'm saying? Anyway, there's a lot in this Timeless 2. It's crazy. All the stuff I add into my show at the beginning when I grunt, usually in the beginning, and also at the end when we yell sound great, I'll put some big long delay reverb thing on my voice and my guest voice. Volcano is a filter, and this is meant to be like, like in dance songs or, it's hard to explain. To move a filter and cut off all the, remove all the high end, and then so it's like a beat playing and it sounds like a drum beat, and then you just start rolling off the high end so that now it's like a drum beat, but you can't, there's no clarity to it. It's like muffled and in the background. There's, so this, and then you can do all kinds of stuff using multiple ones. You can do crazy stuff. Like dance music does a lot of, uses filter. This is what they do. This is how they do it. Using all that filter stuff. I mean, this is one plugin that does what they do. I'm sure there are many others. Isotope vinyl. Come on, man. It was free. It was free. Anyway, it you can make the audio sound like it's playing back off vinyl. And you can adjust various parameters of what's involved with playing audio off of a record with the needle. You got mechanical noise, wear, electrical noise, dust, scratch, and warp depth. It's so cool. Anyway, if you want to make something sound like it's old, coming off of an old record, this, that plugin does it. Yeah, the Pro R. This is another one that's really, really cool. Though I haven't, of course, I haven't had time to really play with it that much because obviously we don't usually use reverb in podcasting. Though sometimes I do. A lot of times I do. What's my see? 4%. So I've used this before for many episodes of my show. Not many. Well, 20. Maybe 20. I would basically run my voice through this, or run all the voices in the episode through this, and add tiniest bit of little reverb. Just gave it slightly more depth after, really dialing it in. But it's totally not necessary. And I found recently, I don't know, I think it was like one mix, it was up near like 6%, and then I was hearing it back, and I was like, really? Is it that bad? I think even one of my listeners might have written to me and said, "Oh, was there reverb on that in that episode?" and I was like, yeah, it was supposed to be a little and unnoticeable, but maybe I put it too high and it was too noticeable, which I didn't want it to be. Abbey Road plates. Well, plate reverb's always been like my favorite type of reverb. I don't know why. I think it just, in a way, it's like plate reverb is like, you can have more, you can like have a lot of plate reverb, but it still doesn't sound like a lot of reverb. And it's hard to explain. But anyway, Abbey Road plates, the plates that they used at Abbey Road with, I'm sure, the Beatles and Pink Floyd, right? And little altar boy, this is how I would get my, I made the alien sound of my voice in my show. De-essers. Well, this is a Waves de-esser. This is the Manny M Triple D. The Manny M Triple D? Are you kidding me? Anyway, I don't use this very often at all, but I don't know. Sometimes I use it to find stuff or find frequencies. It's sort of a fun one, too. It's just the way it works and the names and stuff. Then, of course, there's FabFilter Pro DS. World class, again, for de-essers. And Soothe 2, which is my new, this might be my new favorite. It's like an intelligent de-esser. Think of it that way. And you can use it full spectrum, even on the low end. So if there's too much mud in the low end, you can actually tame that with Soothe. So many controls. This is really cool. And you can hear the delta. So if you can play, when you click delta, you're only hearing what the plugin is doing to the sound. And so then you hit delta, or you click delta, and then you find where let's say the sibilant sounds the worst, the most pronounced, the most sort of sharp. And you find where it's the worst, and then you know that's what it's removing, so then you can dial in the depth of it better. And, of course, dialing in the frequency, that's the first thing you do, is you find the frequency settings first where it's solving the problem, and then you dial in how much of that you're going to use with the depth. Pretty cool. All right. Okay, terrific. And then saturation. I mean, True Iron is so cool. Fab Filter Saturn is cool, but I'm starting to not use it anymore. Part of it is because I used to use Clean Tube, and I liked it. And then I must have saw something about tape emulation, and I was like, oh yeah, I should probably use Warm Tape. Which is cool, but it wasn't right. And then I think I always had it at 14%, and then I started bringing it down, and I was using it at like 6%. And then at that point I was like, you know what? Why am I even I'm trying to force it into my signal chain. So I stopped using it. J37 is kind of pretty cool tape emulation, and same with Kramer tape. I did use this one for a bunch of episodes too. I kind of like this one, but I mean, you can only use so much saturation. It's one of those, if you try to make something sound really, just have depth and be strong. Okay, so that was saturation. Channel strips, well, this is another one that I love, and I'm going to use this on people's voices. Definitely. This thing is pretty cool, but there's a lot to it. You don't have to use all of it, but pretty cool. Oh, well, the Celestial, which is the one that's free, this is actually still... it's going to be free for another few weeks, I think. Or maybe longer? I don't know. But it's a very interesting and cool channel strip kind of plugin. And there's 2 different flavors of it. Ozone 9, yeah, I'm not using that very much. Sheps, definitely use all the time. The gate is real nice. You can dial that in pretty good. A little bit of saturation sounds real nice in here. And of course, 2 de-essers. I mean, geez, that's awesome. The EQ's nice. And the compressor, there's 3 different compressors. Anyway, this Sheps is a good plugin. Excuse me. Then you got the SSL E channel strip. This is the one I personally most worked on because it was Studio E at Soundtrack, and they had a 4000E. It was a small mix room. It was really small. It was like a smallish control room, but that was the whole studio, and a vocal booth. Had these big Yuri speakers in the wall, NS10s as near fields. Yeah, and I used to really like the EQ, like just something about the way it's laid out and how it sounds. It's like, it was really cool to mix. I've mixed many songs on this console. Very cool. And then of course the G channel. This is again Studio G at Soundtrack had a 6000G. And that's where Andy Wallace actually mixed many records. My friend Steve Sisko was an assistant engineer at Soundtrack, and he was Steve. He was an assistant engineer at Soundtrack, and he always worked with Andy Wallace. He was like Andy's assistant. Though he did work on some other sessions and other clients, and there's some funny stories there. But anyway, he was a great guy. But I also mixed some, quite a few songs in that room as well on this G channel. But it was good, but it was a little different. But it was cool. Yeah, the E was always the E always just sounded like more raw, a little more vibrant, maybe. I don't know. So anyway, well, okay, so I went through all my plugins. So I think we will end the stream here. Well, thank you for hanging out. Thank you, everyone. All right, we'll see you.